Back in Israel, the threat of death is raining from the sky tonight in a country where they have effectively been at war now for days.
That's from Gaza. That's Gaza. Guys, get out of the sky. We need to go undercover. Here.
We are told the terror group Hamas fired nearly 100 rockets into Israel today. Over 3.5 million Israelis, that's almost half the country, now living under the constant threat of rocket attacks and praying that Israel's Iron Dome defense system can keep them safe. So where is America? Well, President Obama has been fundraising. He's been playing pool. He's been railing on Republicans here at home. Indeed, it was not until news spread today that leaders from around the globe, including the UK Prime Minister, Angela Merkel of Germany, and others, had reached out to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, that finally, late today, our president called the Israeli leader, one of our closest allies. Ben Shapiro is author of The People versus Barack Obama. He joins us now. Ben, we had five. Ban Ki-moon of the UN called Benjamin Netanyahu before we did. This hit the news. The White House was asked about it repeatedly. Has the president called Netanyahu? Has he called Netanyahu? Day after day, it was no, 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 no. And now with five world leaders, France beat us to it. France. Finally, he calls him. What kind of a message does that send?
Well, it's not just the message that it sent by not calling. When he finally did call today, they released the transcript, and the transcript had President Obama suggesting that while Israel had a right to defend itself, the president would really prefer if Prime Minister Netanyahu and Israel really ratchet this down, take down the risk escalation and all of this, asking a state that is under the constant threat of rocket attack aimed at civilian centers to ratchet down its targeting of those rockets, because this is what Israel does. They're literally warning the people who are standing around those rockets to get out. And Hamas, as you mentioned earlier, is telling people to stay around the rockets, women and children. How can you tell people to stop defending themselves? This is what the Obama administration effectively is doing and has been doing for a long time, creating daylight between the United States and its only ally in the Middle East at this point.
How specifically has the president done that, in your view?
Well, in terms of creating daylight, the president of the United States had an opportunity in June, the beginning of last month. The Hamas joined the Palestinian Authority. They created a unity government. Palestinian Authority was supposedly the moderates. Hamas was supposedly the terrorists. They created a unity government with Islamic Jihad. 88 senators. This is a bipartisan thing. 88 senators wrote a letter to the president saying, you need to make U.S. aid to the Palestinian Authority contingent on the breakup of that unity government. President Obama refused to do it.
Because if we didn't, we're basically funding a terror group. If we didn't do that, then we're basically funding a terror group, Hamas.
We are currently funding a terror group to the tune of $440 million a year, because that is a unity government. This is a terror group recognized by the State Department. There's actually two of them. It's Hamas and Islamic Jihad working with the Palestinian Authority. They are currently firing rockets at Israel, and our taxpayer dollars are going to that government.
And speak specifically, because this war that we're watching in Israel, and we stand at the precipice tonight. The layest reporting is that the likelihood of ground troops invading the Palestinian territory now, up to 40,000, they're talking about Israeli soldiers potentially, could be imminent. It could be imminent. All hell could be breaking loose there tonight, Ben. And if Israel is in a full-blown war now with Palestine and Hamas, United States interests are directly implicated. The catalyst, they say, for this latest terrible fighting was the murder of those 3 Israeli students, teenagers, who were kidnapped and murdered. And what did we do or say about that? Was there anything we could have done to try to stop this from escalating?
Absolutely. The same thing we could have done when they formed the unity government. 10 days after that unity government was formed, the 3 Jewish boys, including an American citizen, were kidnapped by Hamas operatives. The Obama administration, the State Department condemned it, but they did not threaten to withdraw aid. For 3 weeks, the President of the United States himself said absolutely nothing. And then finally, when he did say something, he said that Israel should act with restraint with regard to the people who had kidnapped and killed these boys. This is an anti-Israel administration. It's the first administration in American history that is obviously anti-Israel. It's borderline a Jew-hating administration. There can be no question at this point that the daylight that has been created between the United States and Israel has emboldened Israel's enemies and enemies of the United States.
How do you say that? That Iron Dome system, Ben, that they are using so effectively in Israel tonight was largely funded in part by the United States, hundreds of millions of dollars under President Barack Obama.
Well, the president of the United States still is going to sign over money to Israel because it's politically unpalatable not to do so. But that doesn't mean that the president of the United States can't undermine Israel's ability to take out the people who are going after it. And that is what Israel needs to do. Iron Dome cannot defend Israel. Iron Dome can only stop a certain number of rockets that are coming in. It can't stop all of them. We are seeing hundreds of rockets hit Israel, and we are seeing a small percentage of those being shot down, the most dangerous of those shot down by Iron Dome. The question, it's only a matter of time until one of these rockets hits an Israeli population center, and everybody in Israel and the United States knows it.
It's incredible to think of those millions of Israelis in basements and bunkers right now worrying about getting bombed to death. Ben Shapiro, thank you.
The two-state solution is stupid. Okay, I knew it was stupid when I was 9, and they were doing the Oslo Accords. It turns out that giving terrorists a state is not a good idea. The Palestinian Authority was a terrorist group. It is a terrorist group. Hamas is a terrorist group. Islamic Jihad is a terrorist group. Giving terrorists a state is a terrible, terrible, terrible idea. And when you say we're making a peace deal, and the peace deal is going to be that at the end you get a state, you've already given up what you're negotiating. Right? There's no more negotiation. So why exactly would the Palestinians give up anything at that point? Why would they stop the terrorism? They know what the end point of this negotiation is, and they know that all the pressure is on Israel to concede things. Beyond that, the stupidity of Oslo was saying that the Palestinians have a right to an independent state. There is no such historic right for the Palestinians to have an independent state. That state was called Jordan historically. Right? When they partitioned British Mandate Palestine, there were two states, right? Originally there were really only two states, and it was Jordan and Israel, and that was it. And then they sliced off another like quasi little state, and that was the so-called West Bank and Gaza Strip, and the Arabs rejected that deal. So there's no history to having a second Palestinian state in the region. Jordan is 70% Palestinian. The idea that it was a foregone conclusion, the only way there was ever going to be peace was to put a terrorist group in charge of the West Bank and Gaza Strip. Absolute stupidity. When the Jews pulled out of the Gaza Strip, it immediately was turned into Hamasistan, which is an actual terror state. And the fact that everybody keeps glomming onto this two-state deal, this two-state solution, is really dumb. And it was really dumb for the Israelis to do it because it was basically suggesting that the Jews were interlopers in the region, that the Jews had to make some sort of deal to give away the heart of what it means to be Jewish, really. I mean, Judea and Samaria are the heart of biblical Israel. Giving away the heart of biblical Israel to the Palestinian Arabs suggests that they have a primacy of historical claim that simply does not exist. Oslo is foolish for that reason, historically, morally, politically, an abomination. And finally, recognizing that after 25 years of failure seems like a pretty good approach. It seems like after doing this for 2 decades of silliness, maybe we should try something else. Now, there are a bunch of different things that could be done here. One could be just a continuation of status quo, which is you don't get to ship weapons in. You guys get to handle your own crap internally. And as long as there's no terrorism, we can have free flow of people in and out of Palestinian areas without granting independent statehood. That's not an apartheid state. Okay? The United States basically has that sort of relationship with Puerto Rico. Right? Puerto Rico isn't a sovereign country. Puerto Rico is still administered. It's territory of the United States, technically. They don't get to vote in the presidential elections. They're not American citizens. But the United States actually helps out in the administration of Puerto Rico. And so suggesting that this is some sort of apartheid state, if they were to come to this sort of arrangement, is silly. There's also the Carolyn Glick solution, which would be a one-state solution, which is basically Israel annexes everything. And then Israel actually gives citizenship to the Palestinians because, guess what? There are 6 million Jews in the area. There are only like 1.5 million Palestinians. And that's not the world's biggest deal. So there are plenty of solutions other than we have to give an independent state to a bunch of genocidal people who wish to wipe Jews off the map. It's always funny. They always talk about the Jews participating in some sort of ethnic cleansing effort by moving Palestinians. They never talk about the Palestinians forcibly moving Jews out of How many Jews live in quote-unquote Palestine? The answer is 0. 0 Jews live there. How many Israeli Arabs live in Israel? Over 1 million. So the idea that the ethnic cleansing is coming from the Jewish side is really quite spectacularly stupid. Getting rid of the idea that the Palestinians have to have their own state as a precondition for any negotiation is a good first step, because if you're actually going to have a negotiation, everything should be on the table. Nothing should be off the table. The reason Netanyahu wants to bring in regional partners on the peace deal is because he knows that Jordan doesn't want the Palestinians. He knows Egypt doesn't want the Palestinians. He knows the Saudis don't want the Palestinians. All of them oppose a Palestinian state. Here's the reality. Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, none of them want a Palestinian state. They all pretend they do for public consumption. None of them actually do. The reason they don't actually want that is because if there were a Palestinian state on the border of Jordan, it would immediately become a terror threat to Jordan itself. And the Egyptians don't want a Palestinian terror state on their border. They've been having all sorts of border trouble. The leader, al-Sisi, has been having all sorts of border trouble with Gazastan, with Hamasistan in Gaza, because Egypt is in control of the Sinai Desert, which runs all the way up to the Gaza Strip. So none of these countries actually want there to be a Palestinian state. Netanyahu knows that. That's why Netanyahu is saying we should have a regional approach here. Listen, Netanyahu, okay, the Israeli government has a on the table constant offer to the Jordanians that if the Jordanians want to take over all of the Palestinian territories, they can. You know what the Jordanians say? They say no. No one wants to be in charge of this. You know why? Because it's filled with a terror government.